Nice shotgun.
Okay, let's try this then.
If I remember correctly, like doctor shit, like you don't have. You're not the one who has to.
There we go.
Like shit will just happen on the map.
Hello, hello, hello. Oh, hi there.
And I always thought I found that
Hi,
fascinating.
Toasty. Hi,
Things, like, ever
Mercury.
played
Hi,
through,
everyone.
like,
I hope you're
different
having a
or can be
spectacular
different.
evening. Trying to move thing about on my mic as I need to, and was that good? There. Okay. Let me find some good. Hopefully, try and find some good calming music. Pop, pop, pop. Theme song is off for now. If they've got like a calming playlist, doesn't look like it. Maybe this one. Okay, looks like some of these will work. If I come across a bad one, I'll just kind of skip to the next. You're excited, are you? Why are you heckin' excited? Me. I'm nothing special. Hmm?
Object.
I am not anything special. Here and me.
Oh,
I hope
yeah.
all of you,
I didn't know you did.
sweet little beans, are having a great time. As I said in the tweet, I will never understand why y'all ask me this, but yeah, there you go. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do the thing. And hope you don't mind the change of background lighting. I just wanted everything to be a bit more calmer, you know? I want to do it properly.
Fucking with anomalies.
Why are you all excited for this? It's nothing big, I swear. It's me doing something silly. My gosh. Alright, well, hydration is important. So, grab a drink and sit back, relax.
I mean, it's not a horrible crawl, but like if you're
I will admit,
I can imagine
it's a little hard to
detriment.
pick out the book I really, really wanted to read. I'm gonna keep trying to edit these filters just so you guys don't really have to hit anything other than, because that's the idea. Let me know if at any point I start to get like cut off or anything. I'm just trying to make it a nice calming microphone type situation, so gonna be a little bit of experimentation. Oh, and I just realized I hadn't turned the music on. That's my dumb self. There we go. So I turn myself up so that you all can hear over the music. Okay, where was I? Oh yes, books to read. I have multiple books I could have read, and I'm a massive fan of certain series. The Knife series by J.R. Anderson, I'm a massive fan of. I love the Discworld novels. One of the things I'm gonna read you. I am a fan of the Red Dwarf series books. I actually like books more than most realize. And I can see myself cutting out. Yeah. We're gonna go try to do. But I'm actually probably a fan of books more than most people realize. I even have a huge anime collection that kind of just sits on my bookshelves and is kind of spilling out. um, so yeah. Again, I swear this is nothing special. I don't know why you're all so excited. Like, this is something I've done multiple times in the past. But yes, wherever you happen to be, I hope you are sitting back somewhere. Oh, let me just type. Okay. Sorry. Just had to enough. Hiking comfy? You're hiking comfy? Good.
You're getting like
I want you all to get nice and comfy. I want you all to grab a comforting drink, whether that's a hot chocolate, a coffee, water, whatever you heckin' need. Make sure you've got big, fluffy, plushy, cuddly thing near you. And I still don't understand why y'all wanted this. I still do not. I will try and do voices. You lot wanted me to not use the voice changer, so I'm gonna try and do voices. I will probably hecking suck at them, but I'll try. Why not? Why not, right? So yeah, I'm gonna read you Discord. Here's what I'm gonna do. And the first book in this color, again, it's cutting out again, I can see. Come on, microphone. Don't do this to me right now. Anyway, the first book in the Discord series is called The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. If you don't know what the Discord series is, don't worry, you don't need to know. You will find out as we read these books. I will say one thing, if y'all enjoy this, if y'all really like it, let me know, and maybe I'll do a YouTube series, videos out of this. Maybe. We'll see, because that's the only way I think I can see myself doing this. I don't think I could continue to stream this, but if you like, I can make a video series about it, and you can enjoy it that way. Anyway, you ready to begin, little ones? So hecking embarrassing, you've no idea. Turn the music down because I think it's a little too loud. A little too loud on my. Yeah, there we go. Need to be able to concentrate.
A person.
There we go. Terry Pratchett, The Color of Magic. In a distant land, and a second-hand set of dimensions, in an astral plane that was never meant to fly, the curling star mists waver and part. The great Artuin, the turtle, comes swimming slowly through the interstellar gulf. Hydrogen forest on thunderous limbs. His huge and ancient ship topped with meteor craters. Through sea-sized eyes that are crusted with rheum and asteroid dust, he stares fixedly at his destination. In
Oh,
a brain
shit.
bigger than a city, with a geological slowness, he thinks only of the weight. Most of the weight is, of course,
right.
accounted for by Brillia, Tubal, Great Typhon, and Jerakeen, the 4 giant elephants upon whose broad and star-tanned shoulders the disk of the world rests. Garland by the long waterfall, at its vast circumference and domed by the baby blue vault of heaven. Excuse my language. Astrophysiologically has been as yet unable to establish what they think about.
God.
The great turtle was a mere hypothesis until the day the small and secretive kingdom of Krull, whose rimmost mountains protect over the rimfall, built a gantry and pulley arrangement at the very tip of the most impetuous crag and lowered several observers over the edge. In a quartz windowed brass vessel to peer through the mist veils. The early astrozoologists, pulled back from their long, dangled and enormous terms of slaves, were able to bring back much information about the shape and nature of Artuin and the elephants. But this did not resolve fundamental questions about the nature and the purpose of the universe. For example, what was Artuin's actual sex? A vital question, said the astrozoologists, which mounting authority would not be answered until a larger and more powerful gantry was constructed for a deep space vessel. In the meantime, they could only speculate about the revealed cosmos. There was, for example, the theory that Artuin had come from nowhere, and would continue to uniformly crawl or steadily gate into nowhere for all time. This theory was popular among the academics. An alternative, favoured by those of a religious persuasion, was that Artuin was a crawling from a birthplace, the time of mating, as it were. Stars in the sky which were observed also carried giant turtles. When they arrived, they were briefly and passionately made for the first and only time, and formed that fiery union new turtles would be born to carry a new pattern of worlds. This was known as the Big Bang Hypothesis. Heh heh. Thus it was that a young Cosmochidion of the Steady Gate faction, testing a new telescope at which he hoped to make measurements of the precise albedo of Great Artuin's sky, was on his eventful evening first outsider smoke cry upward from the burning of the oldest world. Later that night, he became so engrossed in his studies he completely forgot about it. Nevertheless, he was the first, but there were others. Again, if I'm cutting out, let me know. I'm not paying close attention. Chapter 1. The Color of Magic.
I mean, I imagine you find a good...
Fire roared through the bifurcated city of Ankh-Morpork, where it licked the wizard's quarter, burned blue and green, and was even laced with Sparkle's 8th color, Octarine. Where its outriders found their way into the vast oil stores among Merchant Street, it progressed in a series of blazing fountains and explosions. In the streets of the perfumed blenders, it burned with a sweetness where it touched bundles of rare and dry herbs. Of the dung masters, it made men go mad and talk to God. By now, the whole of downtown Morkpork was alight, and the richer and worthier citizens of Ankh on the far bank, barely responding to this situation by feverishly demolishing the bridges. But already the ships in Morkpork docks, laden with grain, cotton, and timber, and coated with tar, were blazing merrily, and in their moorings burnt to ash, were blasting the river ebb tide ignited like palaces and bowers as they drifted like drowning fireflies toward. In any case, sparks were riding the breeze and touching down far across the river in hidden gardens, remote Ricky. Smoke from the merry burning rose miles high in a wind-sculpted black column be seen across the whole of the disk. It was certainly impressive for the cool, dark hilltop a few leagues away, where two figures were watching with considerable interest. The taller of the pair was chewing on a chicken leg and leaning on a sword that was only marginally shorter than the average man. If it wasn't for the air of wiry intelligence about him, it might have been supposed that he was a barbarian from the Hubland Wastes. His partner was much shorter and wrapped from head to toe in a brown cloak. Later, when he has occasion to move, it will be seen that he moves lightly, cat-like. Two had barely exchanged a word the last 20 years. Inconclusive argument. Particularly powerful explosion had oil bond, or the workshop of Krabul the Enchanter. Money hinged on it, in fact. Now, the big man finished gnawing at the bone and tossed it into the grass, smiling ruefully.
Oh, God.
There go all the little alleyways, he said. I like them. All the treasure houses. Sorry. And all the treasure houses, said the small man. He added thoughtfully. Do gems burn, I wonder? They said they're kind coal. All the gold melting and running down the gutters, said the big one, ignoring him. And all the wine boiling in the barrels. They were rats, said his brown companion. Rats, I'll grant you. There was no place to be a high summoner. That too. One can't help feeling, though, a momentary... He trailed off, then brightened. We owed old Farador at the Crimson Leech 8 silver pieces, he added. They were silent for a while, as the whole new series of explosions caved a red line across the Kiritu dark section of the greatest city in the world. Then the big man stirred. Weasel? Yes? I wonder who started it. Small swordsman known as the Weasel said nothing. He was watching the road in a ruddy light. Few had come that way since the docile gate had been one of the first to collapse in a shower of white-hot embers. But the two were coming up to it now. The Weasel's eyes, always at their sharpest in gloom and half-light, made out the shapes of two mounted men, and some sort of low beast behind them. Doubtless the richer merchant escaping with a much treasure as he could lay frantic hands on. The Weasel said as much to his companion, who sighed. Status of footpad ill suits us, said the barbarian. But as you say, the times are hard, and there is no soft beds tonight. Aye, Messiah. He shifted his grip on his sword, and as the leading rider drew near, stepped out into the road with a hand held up to his face, set in a grin nicely calculated to reassure, yet threaten. Your pardon, sir, he began. The rider reined into his horse and drew back his hood. The big man looked into the face, blotched with superficial... Ow! Thank you. Thank you, Messiah. The big man looked into the face, blotched with superficial burns and punctuated by tufts of singed beard. Even the eyebrows had gone. Bagger off, said the face. You're Bolvar the Hublander, aren't you? I could read the excerpts here for each thing. What do you guys want? Do you want me to read all the little detailed excerpts it adds? Or do you want me to just read the story? For now, I'm going to read the excerpt, and you lot can let me know if you like it or not. Uplander. The shape and cosmology of the disk system are perhaps worthy of note at this point. There are, of course, two major directions on the disk, upward and rimward. But since the disk itself revolves at the rate of 1 every 800 days, in order to distribute the weight of fairly upon its supportive pachydermis according to Ruford of Kroll, there are also two lesser directions, which, turnwise and windishins. Since the disk's tiny orbiting sunlet maintains a fixed orbit, while the majestic disk turns slowly beneath it. It will be readily deduced that the disk year consists of not 4 but 8 seasons. The summers are those times when the sun rises or sets at the nearest point on the rim. The winters are those occasions when it rises and sets at the point around 90 degrees along the circumference. Love you too, Messiah. Bruvard became aware that he had fumbled his initiative. "Oh, just go away, will you?" said the rider. "I just haven't got the time for you. Do you understand?" He looked around and added, "That goes for your shadow-loving fleabag partner too, wherever he's hiding." The weasel stepped up the horse and peered at the dishevelled figure. "Why, if it isn't Rincewind the wizard," he said in tones of delight, meanwhile finding the wizard's description of him in their memory for leisurely vengeance. "I thought I recognized that voice." Brevard spat and sheathed his sword. It was seldom worth tangling with wizards. They so rarely had any treasure worth speaking of. "He talks pretty big for a gutter wizard," he muttered. "Oh, you don't understand," said the wizard wearily. "I'm so scared of you, my spine has turned to jelly. It's just that I'm suffering from an overdose of terror right now. I mean, when I've got over there, then I'll have time to be decently frightened of you." Oh, the excerpt's meant to go across. Okay. One of those weirdly formatted bits here. Thus it lands around the Circle Sea, and the year begins Hogswatch Night. Progress through the spring, prime to its first midsummer, Small God's Eve, which is followed by Autumn Prime and Straddling, and the half-year point of Jewel Tide, Winter Spindlings, also known as Spindle Winter, since at this time the sun rises in expression of spin. This comes Succulendous Spring, with summer 2 on its heels, and 3/4 mark of the year being the might of Owl's Farrow, the one night of the year according to legend when witches and warlocks stay in bed. Then drifting weaves of frosty nights drag on towards the back spindle winter, a new Hogswatch night, like a frozen. Since the hub is never closely warmed by the weak sun, lands there are locked in permafrost. The rim, on the other hand, is a region of sunny islands and balmy days. There are, of course, 8 days a week and 8 colours in its light spectrum. 8 is a number of some considerable occult significance on the never ever be spoken by a wizard. Precisely why all of the above should be is not so clear, but goes some way to explain why on the disc gods are not so much worshipped as blamed. The weasel pointed towards the burning city. "You been through that?" he asked. The wizard rubbed his red raw hand across his eyes. "I was there when it started. See him, back there?" He pointed back down the road to where his travelling companion was still approaching, having adopted a method of riding that involved falling off of his saddle every few seconds. "Well?" said Weasel. "He started it," said Rincewind simply. Bolvard and Weasel looked at the figure, now hopping across the road with one foot in a stirrup. Fire razor, said Bolvard. No, not precisely. Let's just say that if complete and utter chaos was lightning, then he'd be a sort of stand on top of a hilltop in a thunderstorm, wearing a wet copper armor and shouting, "All gods are bastards!" Got any food? Here's some chickens. In exchange for a story, said Weasel. What's his name? Said Bolvard, tended to lag behind in conversations. Two Flower. Two Flower? What a funny name. You, Rincewind, dismounting, do not know the half of it. Chicken, you said? Deviled, said Weasel. It groaned. That reminds me. Oh, sorry. That reminds me, added Weasel, snapping his fingers. There was a really big explosion about, half an hour ago. That was the oil bond store going up? Yeah, said Rincewind, wincing at the memory of the burning rain. Weasel turned and grinned expectantly at his companion, who grunted and handed over a coin from his pouch. Then it was a scream from the roadway. Cut off abruptly, Rincewind did not look up from his chicken. You see, one of the things he can't do, he can't ride a horse, he said. Then he stiffened as if sandbagged by a sudden recollection, gave a small yelp of terror and dashed into the gloom. When he returned, the being called Two Flower was hanging limply over his shoulder. It was small and skinny and dressed very oddly in a pair of knee-length breeches and a shirt in such a violent and vivid conflict of colours, the Weasel's fastidious eye was offended even in the half-light. No broken bones, by the feelings of it, said Rincewind. He was breathing heavily. Bolvard winked at the Weasel and went to investigate the shape that resembled what was a pack animal. You'd be wise to forget it, said the wizard, without looking up from his examination of the unconscious Two Flower. Believe me, a power protects it. A spell? Said Weasel, squatting down. No, but a kind of magic, I think. Not the usual sort. I mean, turn gold into copper, while at the same time it is still gold. It makes men rich by destroying their possessions. It also the weak. It allows the weak to walk fearlessly among thieves. It passes through the strongest doors to reach the most protected treasuries. Even now it has me enslaved, so that I must follow this madman willfully to protect him. It's stronger than you, Bolvard. It is. I think even more cunning than you, Weasel. What is it called, this mighty magic? Rincewind shrugged.
He's like...
It's
bleeding out of the
it's our
campfires.
tongue.
Like,
it's called reflected sound as of underground spirits.
Swell.
You don't ever have any wine, do you? You must know. You must know that I am not without artifice where magic is concerned, said Weasel. Only last year did I, as my sister, by my friend there, out of a notoriously powerful archmage of Humerity from his staff, his belt of moon jewels, and his life. In the approximate order, I do not fear this reflected sound of the underground spirits of which you speak. However, he added, you engage my interest. Perhaps you would care to tell me more? Bolvard looked at the shape of the road. It was closer now, and cleaner. In the pre-dawn light it looked for all the world like a box on legs, said. I'll tell you about it, said Rincewind. If there's any wine, that is. Down in the valley, there was a roar and a hiss. Someone more thoughtful than the rest had ordered to be shut the big river gates that were in the point where the Ark flowed out of the Twin City. Behind its usual egress, the river had burst its banks and was pouring down the fire-ravaged streets. Soon the continent of flame became a series of islands, each one growing smaller as the dark tide rose. And up from the city of fumes and smoke rose a boiling cloud of steam covering the stars. Weasel thought that it looked like some dark fungus or mushroom. The twin city of proud Ankh and the pestilent Morpork, of which all of the other cities of time and space are, as it were, mere reflections, has stood many assaults in its long and crowded history, and has always risen to flourish again. Though the fire and subsequent flood, which destroyed everything left that was not flammable, and added a particularly noisome flux to the survivors' problems, did not mark its end. Rather, it was a fiery punctuation mark, a coal-like coma, or salamander semicolon in a continuing story. Several days before these events, a ship had come to Ankh on the dawn tide and fetched up among many others. In the maze of weirs and docks of Morpork Shore, it carried a cargo of pink pearls, milk nuts, pumice, and some official letters for the Patriarch of Ankh-Morpork, and a man. It was a man who engaged the attention of Blind Hugh. One of the beggars on early duty at the Pearl Dock, he nudged Cripple Wah in the ribs and pointed wordlessly. Now the stranger was standing quarry side, watching several staring seamen carry a large brass-bound chest down the gangplank. Another man, opposite the captain, was standing beside him. There was about the seaman every nerve in his body, which tended to vibrate in the presence of even the smallest amount of impure gold. At 50 paces screamed into his brain the air of one anti-practitioning imminent enrichment. Sure enough, when the chest had been deposited on the cobbles, the stranger reached the pouch and there was a flash of coin. Several coins. Gold. Blind Hugh, his body twanging and presence of whistled to. Then he nudged War again, sent him scurrying off down a nearby alley into the heart of the city. When the captain walked back into his ship, leaving the newcomer looking faintly bewildered on his quarry side, Blind Hugh snatched up his begging cup and made his way across the street. With an ingratiating leer. At the sight of him, the stranger started to fumble urgently with his money pouch. Good day to thee, sire, Blind Hugh began, and found himself looking up into the face of 4 eyes in it. He turned to run. What? Said the stranger, and grabbed his arm. Hugh was aware that the sailors lining the rail of the ship were laughing at him. At the same time, his specialized senses detected an overpowering impression of money. He froze. The stranger let go and quickly fumbled through a small black book he had taken from his belt, then said, "Hello?" "What?" said Hugh. The man looked blankly. "Hello," he repeated, rather loudly than necessary, and so carefully that Hugh could hear every vowel tinkling into place. "Hello yourself," Hugh riposted. The stranger smiled widely, then fumbled yet again in the pouch. This time his hand came out holding a large golden coin. It was in fact slightly larger than $8,000 Ankian crown, and the design on it was unfamiliar, but it spoke inside Hugh's mind, in a language he understood perfectly. "My current owner," it said, "is in need of some succor and assistance. Why not give it to him so that you and me can go off somewhere and enjoy ourselves?" Little changes in the beggar's posture made the stranger feel more at ease. He consulted the small book once again. I wish to be directed to a hotel, tavern, lodging house, inn, hospice, caravani. All of them? You said, taken aback. Hmm? Said the stranger. Hugh was aware that the small crowd of fishwives, shellfish diggers, and freelance gawpers were watching them with interest. Look, I know a good tavern. Is that enough for you? Shuddered to think of the gold coin escaping from his life. He kept that one, even if Ymor confiscated all of the rest. The big chest that comprised most of the newcomer's luggage looked to be full of gold, Hugh decided. The four-eyed man looked at the book. I would like to be directed to an hotel, place of repose, tavern at... Yes, all right. Come on then, said Hugh. Hurriedly, he picked up one of the bundles quickly. The stranger, after a moment's hesitation, strolled after him. A train of thought shuttered its way through his mind. Getting the newcomer to the broken drum so easily was a stroke of luck, no doubt of it. And Jamal would probably reward him, but for all the new acquaintances mindless, there was something about him that made Hugh uneasy. And for the life of him, he couldn't quite figure out what it was. Not the two extra eyes, odd thoughts that they were. There was something else. He glanced back. A little man was ambling along in the middle of the street, looking around him with expression of keen interest. Something else, Hugh thought, nearly made him gibber. The massive wooden chest, which he had seen last resting solidly on the quarry side, was following its master on its heels, with a gentle rocking gait. Slowly, in case of sudden movement on his part might break his fragile control over his own legs, Hugh bent slightly so that he could see under the chest. There were lots and lots of little legs. Very deliberately, Hugh turned around and walked very carefully towards the broken drum. Odd, said Ymor. He had this big wooden chest, added Cripplewar. He'd have to be a merchant or a spy, said Ymor. He pulled a scalp of meat from the cutlet in his hand and tossed it into the air. It hadn't reached its zenith of the arc before a black shape detached itself from the shadows of the corner of the room and swooped down, taking the morsel in midair. A merchant or a spy? Repeated Ymor. I prefer spy. Spy pays for himself twice because there's always the reward when we turn him in. What do you think, Gwithril? Opposite Ymor, the second greatest thief in Ankh-Morpork, half closed one of his eyes and shrugged. I've checked on the ship, he said. It's a freelance trader. Does the occasional run to the Brown Islands. People there are just savages. They don't understand about spies, and I expect they eat merchants. He looked like a merchant, volunteered Wah. Except he wasn't fat. There was a flutter of wings out the window. Ymor shifted his bulk out of the chair and crossed the room, coming back with a large raven after he unfastened the message capsule from its leg and let it flew up to join its fellows lurking among the rafters. Gwithril regarded it without love. Ymor's ravens were notoriously loyal to their master, to the extent that Gwithril's once attempt to promote himself to the rank of greatest thief in Ankh-Morpork had cost their master's right-hand man his left eye, but not his life. However, Ymor never grudged at this man's ambition. B12, said Ymor, tossing the little vial aside and unrolling the tiny scroll within. Corinne the cat, said Wifril. On station, up in the going tower at the Temple of Small Gods. You don't have to. I don't have to, but I'm going to. Thank you for the lurk, Messiah. I appreciate it, sweetie. He says Hugh has taken our stranger to the broken drum. Well, that's good enough. Boardman is a friend of ours, isn't he? Aye, said Wifril. If he knows what's good for trade among his customers has been your man Gorin, said Jamal pleasantly. For he writes here about a box on legs. If I read his scrawl correctly, he looked at Wifril over the top of the paper. Yeah. Wifril looked away. He will be disciplined, he said flatly. Wahar looked at the man leaning back on his chair, his black-clad flame resting as nonchalantly as a rimland puma on a jungle branch, and decided that Gorin atop the small god's temple would soon be joining those little deities on the manifold dimensions of beyond. And he owed Wah 3 copper pieces. Yamal crumpled the note and tossed it into the corner. I think we'll wander over to the drum later on. Wifril, perhaps, too. We may tarry this beer that your man finds so tempting. Wifril said nothing. Being Amor's right-hand man, he was like being gently flogged to death with sentence bootlaces. Okay. The twin cities of Ankh-Morpork, for the most for all the cities bounding the Circle Sea, was a matter of course the home of a large number of gangs, thieves' guilds, syndicates, and smaller organizations. This was one of the reasons for its wealth. Most of the humbler folk on the Widdershins side of the river in Morpork, measly alleys supplemented their meagre incomes by filling some small role for one another of the competing gangs. So it was that by high time Hugh and Twoflower entered the courtyard of the Broken Drum. The leaders of the number of them were aware that someone had arrived in the city who appeared to have much treasure. Some reports from the more observant spies included details about the book that had told the stranger what to say, and the box that had walked by itself. These facts were imminently discounted. No magician capable of such enchantments ever came within a mile of Morpork docks. Still, being that hour when most of the city was rising or about to go to bed, there were few stairs with the luggage behind him, started to lurch confidently steps. Customers at the rough wooden tables, one man looked suspiciously at drinks. Boardman was browbeating the small troll who swept the broa when the trio walked past him. What in the hell is that? He said. Just don't talk about it, hissed Hugh. Twoflower was already thumbing through his book. What's he doing? Said Broadman, arms akimbo. It tells him what to say. I know it sounds ridiculous, muttered Hugh. How can a book tell a man what to say? I wish for accommodation, a room, lodgings, the lodging house, full board. Are your rooms clean? A room with a view. What is your rate for the night? Said Twoflower in one breath. Boardman looked at Hugh, the beggar shrugged. Boardman looked at Hugh. The beggar shrugged. Got plenty of money, said. Tell him it's 3 copper pieces then, and that thing will have to stay in the stables. The stranger looked confused. Broadman held up 3 thick red fingers, and the man's face was suddenly sunny display of compensation. He reached into his pouch and laid 3 large golden pieces in Broadman's palm. Broadman stared at them. They represented about 4 times the worth of the broken drum, staff included. He looked at Hugh. There was no help there. He looked at the stranger. He swallowed. Yes, he said in an unnaturally high voice. Oh, hold on. Yes, he said in an unnaturally high voice. And, it's... And then there's meals, of course. You understand? Yes? Food? You eat? No? He made the appropriate motions. Foot, said the little man. Yes, said Broadman, beginning to sweat. Have a look in your little book. I should. The man opened the book and ran a finger down one page. Broadman, who could read after a fashion, peered over the top of the volume. What he saw made no sense. Food, the stranger said. Yes, cutlet, hash, chop, stew, ragout, franchise, minis, chops, souffle, dumpling balance, managed sorbet, gruel, sausage, not to have a sausage, beans without bean, cricketshaw, jelly, jam, giblets. He beamed at Broadman. All that? Said the innkeeper weakly. It's just the way he talks, said Hugh. Don't ask me why, he just does. All eyes in the room were watching the stranger, except for a pair belonging to Rincewind the wizard, who was sitting in the darkest corner nursing a mug of a very small beer. He was watching the luggage. Watch Rincewind. Look at him. Brawny like most wizards and clad in a dark red robe on which few majestic sigils were embroiled. In the tarnished sequins, some might have taken him for a mere apprentice enchanter who had run away from his masters out of defiance, boredom, fear of a lingering taste of heterosexuality, yet around his neck was a chain bearing the bronze octagon that marked him as an alumnus of Unseen University, High School of Magic, whose time and space transcend campuses not precisely here or there. Graduates were usually in for mateship at least. But Rincewind, after an unfortunate event, had left knowing only one spell, and made a living of sorts around the town by capitalizing on his innate gift for languages. He avoided work as a rule, but had a quickness of wit that put his acquaintances in the mind of a bright rodent. And he knew Serpent Pearwood when he saw it, and he was seeing it now, and didn't quite believe it. Let me just take a sip of my drink here so I can get cozy, because I can tell my voice is going a little bit, and we're not even an hour in. I hope you all are very much enjoying this. Continue. An archmage, by dint of great effort and much expenditure of time, might eventually obtain a small staff made from a timber of sapient pear tree. It grew only on the sites of magic. There were probably no more than 2 such staffs in all the cities of the Great Circle Sea. A large chest of it, Rincewind tried to work and decided that if a box were crammed with star opals. Oh, hi, core love. Even if a box were crammed with star opals and sticks of orsarinium, the corners would not be worth 1/10 the price of the container. A vein started to throb on his forehead. He stood up and made his way to the tree. May I be of assistance? He ventured. Shove off, Wind's friend, snarled Boardman. I only thought that I might be useful to address this gentleman in his own tongue, the wizard said gently. He's doing all right on his own, said the innkeeper, but took a few steps backwards. Rincewind smiled politely at the stranger and tried a few words of Chernium. His pride beside himself on his fluency in the tongue, but the stranger only looked bemused. It won't work, said Hugh knowledgeably. It's the book, you see. It tells him what to say. It's magic. Rincewind switched to Hyperborean, then to Rangelschmelt, to Tamari, and even Black Uguru. The language with no nouns and only one adjective. Which is obscene. Each was met with a polite incomprehension. In desperation, he tried Hefian Frob, and the little man's face split into a delightful grin. At last, he said. My good sir, this is remarkable. Although in Frob the last word in fact became a thing which may happen but once in the usable lifetime of a canoe hallowed diligently by an axe and fire from the tallest diamondwood tree that grows in the noted diamondwood forest on the lower slopes of the Mount Awa, home of the fire gods, or so it is said. All of that in one word. Yes, these languages are a thing. That's just me. What was all that? Said Broadman suspiciously. What did the innkeeper say? Said the little man. Rincewind swallowed. Broadman said, 2 mugs of your best ale. You can understand him? Oh, sure. Tell him he's very welcome. Tell him breakfast is 1 gold piece. For the moment, Broadman's face looked as though some vast internal struggle was going on, and then he added with a bust of generosity, I'll throw in yours too. Stranger, said Rincewind, if you stay here, you will be knifed or poisoned by nightfall. But don't stop smiling, or so will I. Oh, come now, said the stranger, looking around. This looks like a delightful place. A genuine Morporkian tavern. I've heard so much about them, you know. All these quaint old beams, and so reasonable too. Rincewind glanced around quickly in case some leakage of enchantment from a magician's quarter across the river had momentarily transported them to some other place. No, this was still the interior of the drum. Its walls stained with smoke, its floor a compost of old rushes and nameless beetles, its sour beer not so much purchased as merely hired for a while. Tried to fit the image around the word quaint, or rather the nearest Frob equivalent, which was the pleasant oddity of design found in little coral houses of the sponge-eating pygmies on the Ahori Peninsula. His mind reeled back from the effort. The visitor went on. My name's Two Flower, and extended his hand. Instinctively, the other 3 looked down to see if there was a coin in it. Pleased to meet you, said Rincewind. I'm Rincewind. Look, I wasn't joking. This is a tough place. Good. That's exactly what I wanted. Eh? Come again?
No,
What is this stuff in the mugs? This? Beer. Thanks, Broadman. Yes, beer, you know, but beer? Oh, the so typical drink. A small gold piece will be sufficient payment, don't you think? I do not want to cause offence. It was already half out of his purse. Ah, croaked Rincewind. I mean, no, it won't cause offence. Good. You say this is a tough place? Frequented, you mean, by heroes and men of adventure? Rincewind considered this. Yeah, he imagined. Excellent! I would love to meet some of them. An explanation occurred to the wizard. Ah, he said, you've come to hire mercenaries. Warriors who fight for the tribe with the most milk nut meal. Oh, no, 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 no. I just want to meet them so that when I get home I can say that I did it. Rincewind thought that a meeting with the most of the drum's clientele would mean that Two Flower never went home again, unless he lived downriver and happened to float past it. Where is your home? He inquired. Rawman had slipped away into some back room. He noticed Hugh was watching them suspiciously from the nearby table. Have you ever heard of the city of Bees Pelagic? Well, I don't spend much time in Frob. I was just passing through, you know. Oh, it's not in Frob. I speak Frob because there were many Beetrob sailors in our ports. Bees Pelagic is the major seaport of the Aegean Empire. Never heard of it, I'm afraid. Two Flower raised his eyebrows. No, it's quite big. You sail turnwise from the Brown Islands for about a week, and there it is. Are you alright? He hurried around the table and patted the wizard on the back. Rincewind choked on his beer. The counterweight continent. 3 streets away, an old man dropped a coin into a saucer of acid and swirled it gently. Broadman waited impatiently, ill at ease in a room made of noisome by vats of bubbling beakers lined with shelves containing shadowy shapes, suggestive skulls, and stuffed impossibilities. Well, he demanded, one cannot hurry these things, said the old alchemist. Peevishly, I saying it takes time. He procured the saucer where its coin now lay on the swirl of green colour. He made some calculations on a scrap of parchment. Exceptionally interesting, he said at last. Is it genuine? The old man pursed his lips. It depends on how you would define the term. If you mean, is this coin same as, say, $50 piece, then the answer is no. I knew it. Damned. I knew it, screamed the innkeeper and started towards the door. I'm not sure that I'm making myself clear, said the alchemist. Broadman turned round angrily. What do you mean? Well, you see, what with one thing and another, our coin's age has been somewhat watered over the years. The gold content of the average coin is barely 4 parts in 12, the balance being made up of silver and copper. What of it? I said this coin isn't like ours. This coin is pure gold. After Broadman had left at run, the alchemist spent some time staring at the ceiling. Then he drew out a very small piece of parchment, rummaged for a pen amongst the workbench. Very short, small message. Then he went over to his cages of white doves, black cockerels, other laboratories. From one of the cages he removed a glossy coated rat, rolled up the parchment into a vial, attached it to the hind leg, and let the animal go. It sniffed around the floor for a moment, then disappeared down a hole in the far wall. At about this time, a hitherto unsuccessful fortune teller living on the other side of the block, chanced to glance into her scrying bowl, gave a small scream, and within the hour had sold her jewelry, various magical accoutrements, most of her clothes, and almost all of her possessions that could not be conveniently carried on the fastest horse she could buy. The fact that later on, when her house collapsed in flames, she herself died in a freak landslide in the Moorpork Mountains, proves that Death too has a sense of humor. Oh, I just need to... Why did that stop? Oh, the background I was using stopped for some reason. Give me a moment. Here we go. I needed to correct that. Do excuse me, little ones. I'm sorry about that. Proves that Death 2 has a humor. I think y'all will like Death in this series. He's wonderful. You woke up to a dog in face. So Steve, why are you waking up to dog in face? Or you were watching me in VR for the proper experience. Anyway, let's continue. Also, at about the same moment as the homing rat disappeared into the maze of ruins on the city, scurrying along in a faultless obedience to an ancient instance, the British of Ankh-Morpork picked up the letters delivered that morning by Albatross. He looked pensively at the topmost again and summoned his chief spies. And in the broken drum, Rincewind was listening open-mouthed to Two-Flower talk. The door was open for Fan because... well then, kick the dog out, close the door and find some other way, like opening a window to keep cool, silly boy. That is if you want to continue. So I decided to see for myself, the little man was saying. 8 years saving up for this trip. This has cost me, but worth every half rhino. I mean, here I am in Ankh-Morpork, famed in song and story. I mean, in the streets that have known the tread of Hekrik the Whiteblade, Hun the Barbarian, and Blavad the Hublander, and the Weasel. It is all just like I imagined, you know? Rincewind's face was a mask of fascinated horror. I just couldn't stand it anymore, the bees pelagic, Two-Flower went on belligerently, sitting at a desk all day, just adding up columns and columns of figures, just a pension to look forward to at the end of it. Where's the romance in that? Two-Flower thought. It's now or never. You don't just have to listen to stories, you can go there. Now's the time to stop hanging around in the docks listening to sailors' tales. So I compiled a phrasebook and brought passage on the next ship from the Brown Isles. No guards? Muttered Rincewind. No, why? What have I got that was worth stealing? Rincewind coughed. You have, gold, he said. Barely 2,000 rhino. Hardly enough to keep a man alive for more than a month or two. At home, that is. I imagine they might stretch a little bit further here. Would rhino be those big gold coins? Said Rincewind. Yes, Two-Flower looked worriedly at the wizard over the top of his seeing lenses. Will 2,000 rhino be sufficient, do you think? I mean, yes. Yes, sufficient. Good, good. Is everyone in the Argean Empire as rich as you? Me? Rich? Bless you, whatever put that idea into your head? I am but a poor clerk. Did I pay the innkeeper too much, do you think? Flower added. He might have settled for less, Rincewind conceded. Ah, I shall know better next time. I can see I have a lot to learn. An idea occurs to me, Rincewind. Would you perhaps consent to being employed as a, I don't know, perhaps the word guide would fit the circumstances. I think I could offer you, say, a rhino a day? Rincewind opened his mouth to reply, but felt the words huddled together in his throat, reluctant to emerge in a world that was rapidly going mad. Tufar blushed. I have offended you, haven't I? He said. It was an impertinent request to make of a professional man such as yourself. Doubtless you have many projects you wish to return to, some works of high magic, no doubt. No, Rincewind said feelingly. No, just not at present. A rhino, you say, one a day. Every day? I think perhaps the circumstances I should make it 1.5 rhino per day, plus any out-of-pocket expenses, of course. Wizard railed magnificently. That will be fine, he said. Great. Two-Flower reached into his pouch and took out a large, round gold object. I glanced at it for a moment and slipped it back. Rincewind didn't get a chance to see it properly. I think, said the tourist, that I would like a little rest now. It was a long crossing, and that perhaps you would care to call back at noon, and we could take a look at the city. Sure, said Rincewind. Watching you from VR was the best choice I could have made. Are all of you watching me in VR right now? Really? Really? Oh my gosh, okay. You lot. I have no words. You lot are very special. Then please be good enough to ask the innkeeper to show me to my room. Rincewind did so and watched the nervous broadman, who had arrived at the gallop from some back room, lead the way up to the wooden behind the bar. After a few seconds, the luggage got up and padded across the floor after them, and the wizard looked down at the 6 big coins in his hand. Twoflower had insisted on paying him for the first 4 days' wages in advance. Hugh nodded and smiled encouragingly. Rincewind snarled at him. As a student wizard, Rincewind had never achieved high marks in precognition, but now, circumstances, brain were throbbing, and the future might as well have been engraved in bright colours in his eyeballs. The space between his shoulder blades began to itch. The sensible thing to do, he knew, was to buy a horse. It would have to be a fast one, and expensive offhand. Rincewind couldn't think of any horse dealer who was rich enough to give chase almost a gold. And then, of course, the other 5 coins would help him set up a useful practice at some safe distance. Say 200 miles? That'd be a sensible thing. But what would happen to Twoflower, all alone in the city, where even the cockroaches had an unerring instinct for gold? A man would have to be a real heel to leave him. It's cozy and your voice is extremely soothing. Look, I'm not core honey pie. I am not saying it's not. I am just hiding it very well right now at the fact that y'all are watching me in VR is very, very flustering. Y'all are very special and I appreciate it. The practitioner of Ankh-Morpork smiled, but with his mouth only. The hub gate, you say? He murmured. The guard captain saluted. Aye, lord. We had to shoot the horse before it would stop. Which, by a fairly direct route, brings you here, said the practitioner, looking down at... Wait. This one? Oh, I did miss one. No, I didn't. Interesting. I thought I'd missed one. My bad. I thought I'd missed a page by accident. Said the practitioner, looking down at Rincewind. And what have you got to say for yourself? It was rumoured that the entire wing of the practitioner's palace was filled with clerks who spent their days collecting the information collected by their master's exquisitely organised spy system. Rincewind didn't doubt it. He glanced towards the balcony that was side of the audience room. A sudden run of nimble jump and a sudden half of pulls.
Okay.
The practitioner cradled his chains in a hand and guarded the wheel. Let me see. Oath breaking and theft of a horse, unfetting false coinage. Yes, I think that's the arena for you, Rincewind. Too much. I didn't steal the horse. I bought it fairly, but with false coinage. Technically theft, you see. But those rhino are solid gold. Rhino? See? Fiction rolled one of them around in his thick fingers. Is that what they are called? How interesting. But as you point out, they are not very similar to dollars. Well, of course not. Ah, you admit it then! Rincewind opened his mouth to speak, though thought better of it and shut it again. Huh? I will hydrate. Thank you, sweetie. Quite so. And on top of that, and on top of these, there is of course the moral ambiguity attendant on the cowardly betrayal of a visitor of the shore. For shame, Rincewind. The partition waved a hand vaguely. The guards behind Rincewind barked away, and the captain took a few paces to the right. Rincewind suddenly felt very alone. It is said that when a wizard is about to die, Death himself turns up to claim him. Instead of delegating the task to a subordinate such as disease or famine, as is usually the case. Rincewind looked around nervously for a tall figure in black. Wizards, even failed wizards, have an addition to rods and cones in their eyeballs. The tiny octagons that enabled them to see into the far octarine, the basic colour of which all other colours are merely pure pale shadows, impining on normal four-dimensional space. It is said to be some sort of fluorescent greenish yellowish purple. Was that a flickering shadow in the corner? Of course, said the Britician. I could be merciful. The shadow disappeared. Rincewind looked up, an expression of insane hope on his face. Yes, he said. The Britician waved a hand again. Rincewind saw the guards leave the chamber, alone with the overlord of the Twin Cities. He almost wished that they would come back. Come hither, Rincewind, said the Britician. He indicated a bowl of souvenirs on a low onyx table by the throne. Would you care for a crystallized jellyfish? No? Said Rincewind. No. Now, I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say, said the petition. Otherwise, you will die in a interesting fashion over a period of... Please stop fidgeting. Since you are a wizard of sorts, you are of course aware that we live upon a world shaped, as it were, like a disc, and that there is said to exist towards the far rim a continent which, though small, is equal weight, a mighty landmass, a hem-city circle. The hemicircle, and thus, according to the ancient legend, it is because it is largely made of gold. Rincewind nodded. Who hadn't heard of the counterweight continent? Some sailors even believed the childhood tales and sailed in search of it. Of course, they returned either empty-handed or not at all, probably eaten by giant turtles, in the opinion of most senior mariners. Because, of course, the counterweight continent was nothing more than a sailor's myth. It does, of course, exist, said the petition, although it is not made of gold. It is true that gold is a very common material there. Most of the mass is made up by vast deposits of octron deep within the crust. Now, it will be obvious to an incisive mind like yours, the existence of the counterweight continent poses a deadly threat to our people here. He paused, looking at Rincewind's open mouth and sighed. Do you, by some chance, fail to follow me? Yeah, said Rincewind and swallowed. He licked his lips. I mean, no. I mean, well, gold. I see, said the petition sweetly. You feel, perhaps, that it would be a marvelous thing to go to the counterweight continent and bring back a shipload of gold. Rincewind had a feeling that some sort of trap was being set. Yes, he ventured. And if every man on the shores of the Circle Sea had a mountain of gold of his own, would that be a good thing? What would happen? Think carefully. He thought we'd all be rich. Oh my god, hi! Hello, Raiders! Hi, Atsumori! Hi, Catboy! Hello! Who's a good Catboy? I'm probably gonna get it for that one later on. Finish a tail, young ninja girl. Oh, I like that one. And young, well, thank you so much, handsome Catboy. Hello, hello, Raiders. Here, let me do my thing. And thank you, Core. Hello, Raiders. I am Minty Mew VT. I am a Ninja Kunoichi Ninja Kunoichi VTuber. I am part cat and humanoid. I am Keeper of the Green Lightning. I do gaming. I do crafting. I do art. And on the special occasion, I do something special for my community, which is what you've caught me in the middle of right now. I am doing a bedtime story for my wonderful little community who requested listening to my voice. You take care, and all Minty gonna go now. 8 early for me. You rock. Take care. Thank you, Crystalline. Take care. Go eat. Eating food is important. Yes, I'm doing something, as I said, special for my community in that I am reading a book because all of them wanted to encourage me to be more confident in my voice. So, I am reading them The Color of Magic. We are still in chapter, or well, part 1, I should say. Please feel free to get cozy, grab a nice warm drink, a coffee, a hot cocoa with some little marshmallows, even a bit of snacks. Make sure you've got a nice big plushie, wonderful pillow next to you. Make sure you're nice and warm, and we are going to continue. Feel free and you do have a sexy voice. Oh, Crystalline, that really makes my night. Thank you so much. Night. I'll see you soon. I hope you catch me again soon. It'd be great to see more of you. But yes, please feel free to get comfy. And we're going to continue. And you don't have to speak. If you want to speak, feel free to do so. And I'm just going to continue. I hope you enjoy as we continue on with the Color of Magic. And yes, a lot of people are in VR listening to me. If you want to do that, feel free. The way the temperature fell at his remark told him that he was not correct on that one. I might as well tell you, Rincewind, that there is some contract between the Lords of the Circle Sea and the Emperor of the Argean Empire, as it is styled. The petition went on. It is one very slight. There is a little common ground between us. We have nothing they want, and they have nothing we can afford. It is an old empire, Rincewind, an old, cunning and cruel, and very, very rich. So we exchange fraternal greetings by Atros mail at infrequent intervals. One such letter arrived this morning. A subject of the Emperor appears to have taken it into his head to visit our city. It appears he wishes to look at it. Only a madman would possibly undergo all the previous crossing Turnwise Ocean in order to merely look at anything. However, this morning he might have met a green hero or the cunningness of thieves or some wise great sage, but he met you. He has employed you as a guide. You will be a guide, Rincewind, to this looker, this two-flower. You will see that he returns home with good rapport of our little homeland. What do you say to that? Thank you, my lord, said Rincewind miserably. There is another point, of course. It would be tragedy should anything untoward happen to our little visitor. It would be a dreadful if he were to die, for example, dreadful for the whole of our land because the Argean Empire looks after its own and could certainly extinguish us at a nod. A mere nod. And that would be dreadful for you, Rincewind, because in the weeks that remain before the Empire's huge mercenary fleet arrived, certain of mere servants would be occupying themselves about your person in the hope that the avenging captains on their arrival might find their anger tempered by the sight of your still living body. There are certain spells that can prevent the life departing from a body, it never so abused, and I see by your face that you understanding dawns. I beg your pardon? Yes, Lord. I'll see to it that I'll endeavor to see. Well, I'll try to look after him and see he comes to no harm. After that, I'll get a job juggling snowballs through hell, and he added bitterly in the privacy of his own skull. Capital! I gather already you and Two-Flower are on the best of terms, an excellent beginning. When he returns safely to his homeland, you will not find me ungrateful. I shall probably even dismiss the charges against you. Thank you, Rincewind. You may go. Rincewind decided not to ask for the return of his 5 remaining rhino. He backed away cautiously. Oh, there is one other thing, the petition said, as the wizard groped for the door handles. Yes, Lord? He replied with a sinking heart. I'm sure you won't dream of trying to escape from your obligation by fleeing the city. I judge you to be a born city person, but you may be sure that the lords of the other cities will be appraised to these conditions by nightfall. I assure you the thought never even crossed my mind, my lord. Indeed. If you were, adsure my face for slander. Rincewind reached in the brown drum. Rincewind reached the broken drum at the dead run and was just in time to collide with a man who came out backwards fast. The stranger haste was in part accounted for by the spear that was in his chest. He babbled noisily and dropped dead at the wizard's feet. Rincewind peered around the doorframe and jerked back as a heavy throwing axe whirled past like a partridge. It was probably a lucky throw, a second cautious glance told him. The dark interior of the drum was abroil in fighting men, quite a number of them. A third and longer glance confirmed in bits. Rincewind swayed back as a wildly thrown stool sailed past and smashed on the far side of the street. Then he dived in. He was wearing a dark robe, made darker by the constant wear and irregular washings. In the raging gloom, no one appeared to notice a shadowy shape that shuffled desperately from table to table. At one point, a fighter staggering back trod on what felt like fingers. A number of what felt like teeth hit his ankle. He yelped shrilly and dropped his guard just sufficiently for a sword swung by a surprised opponent to fure him. Rincewind reached the stairway, sucking his hand, running with caution, bent over a gate. Bow quarrel funked into the banister rail above him. He gave a whimper. He made the stairs in one breathless rush, expecting at any moment another more accurate shot. In the corridor above, he stood upright, gasping, and saw the floor in front of him scattered with bodies. A big black-bearded man with a bloody sword in one hand, trying the door handle. "Hey!" Rincewind screamed. The man looked around and then almost absent-mindedly drew a short throwing knife from his bandolier and hurled it. Rincewind ducked. There was a brief scream behind him as the crossbow man, sighting down his weapon, dropped it and clutched at his throat. The bigger man was already reaching for another knife. Rincewind looked around wildly, and then with wild impromptuization drew himself up into a wizardly pose. His hand was flung back. Astoni Kroshlava Belzebor. The man hesitated, his eyes flickering nervously from side to side as he waited for the magic. The conclusion that there was not going to be any hit him at the same time as Rincewind, whirling wildly down the passage, kicking him sharply in the balls. As he screamed and clutched at himself, the wizard dragged open the door, sprang inside, slammed it behind him, and threw his body against it, panting heavily. It was quiet in here. There was Twoflower sleeping peacefully on a low bed. There, at the foot of the bed, was the luggage. Rincewind took a few steps forward, rapidly moving him as if he were on little wheels. The chest was open. There were bags inside, and in one of them he caught a gleam of gold. For a moment, greed overcome caution, and he reached out gingerly. But what was the use? He'd never lived to enjoy it. Reluctantly, he drew his hand back. He was surprised to see the slight tremor in the chest's open lid. Hadn't it slightly sniffed? As thought rocked by the wind. Rincewind looked at his fingers and then at the lid. It looked heavy, and it was bound with brass bands, and it was quite still now. What wind? Rincewind! Twoflower sprang off the bed. The wizard jumped back, stretching his feathers into a smile. My dear chap, right on time! Well, we'll just have lunch, and then I'm sure you've got a wondrous program lined up for this afternoon.
The whole point of these
Eh?
quest things.
That's great! Rincewind took a deep breath. Look, he said desperately, let's eat somewhere else. There's been a bit of a fight below. A tavern brawl? Why didn't you wake me up, man? Well, you see, wait. What?
You're not a D-bag like those.
I thought I made myself clear this morning, Rincewind. I want to see genuine, more Porkian life. The slave market, the whore pits, the temple of small gods, the beggars guild, and the genuine tavern brawl. A faint note of suspicion entered Two Flowers' voice. You do have them, don't you? You know, people swaying on chandeliers, sword fights, over the table, the sort of thing Han the Barbarian and Weasel are always getting involved in. You know, excitement! Rincewind sat down heavily on the bed. You want to see a fight? Yes, what's wrong with that? For a start, people getting hurt. Oh, I wasn't suggesting we get involved. I just want to see one. That's all. And some of your famous heroes, you do have some, don't you? Not all dockside talk, and now that the wizard's astonishment, Two Flower was almost pleading. Oh, yeah, we have them all right, said Rincewind hurriedly. He pictured them in his mind and recoiled from the thought. All the heroes of the Circle C passed through the gates of Ankh-Morpork sooner or later. Most of them were from the barbaric tribes near the Frozen Hub, which had a sort of export trade in heroes. Almost all of them had a crude magic swords, whose unsurpassed harmonics on the astral plane played hell with any delicate experiments in applied sorcery from miles around. But Rincewind didn't object to them on that score. He knew himself to be a magical dropout, so it didn't bother him that the mere appearance of a hero at the city gates was enough to cause retorts to explode and demons to materialize through the magical quarter. No, what he didn't like about heroes was that they were usually suicidally gloomy when sober and homicidally insane when drunk. There were too many of them. Some of the most notable questing grounds near the city were a veritable hubbub of the season. There was talk of organizing a rota. He rubbed his nose. The only heroes he had much time for were Bavard and Weasel, who were out of town at the moment, and Rum the Barbarian, who was particularly an academic by hub standards in that he could think without moving his lips. Run was said to be roving somewhere turnwise. Look, he said at last, have you ever met a barbarian? Two Flower shook his head. I was afraid of that, said Rincewind. Well, there was a clatter of running feet in the street outside, and a fresh uproar downstairs. It was followed by a commotion of the stairs. The door was flung open before Rincewind could collect himself sufficiently to make a dash for the window. But instead of the greed-crazed madman he expected, he found himself looking into the round red face of Sergeant of the Watch. He breathed again. Of course, the Watch were always careful not to intervene too soon in any brawl, where the odds were not heavily stacked in their favour. The job carried a pension and attracted a cautious, thoughtful kind of man. The sergeant glowed at Rincewind and then peered at Two Flower with interest. Everything, all right here then? He said. Oh, yeah. Fine, said Rincewind. Got held up, did you? Sergeant ignored him. This the foreigner then? He inquired. We were just, leaving, said Rincewind quickly, and switched to Frob. Two Flower, I think we ought to get lunch somewhere else. I know some wonderful places. He marched out into the corridor with as much aplomb as he could muster. Two Flower followed, and a few seconds later, their staggering sound from the sergeant was a luggage closed its lid with a snap, stood up, stretched, and marched after them. Watchmen were dragging bodies out of the room. Downstairs, there were no survivors. The Watch had entrusted this by giving them ample time to escape via the back door, a neat compromise between caution and justice that befitted all parties. Who are all these men? Said Two Flower. Oh, just men, said Rincewind. And before he could stop himself, some part of his brain that had nothing to do took control of his mouth and added,
gold one.
heroes, in fact. Really?
Oh.
When one foot is stuck in the dreary miasma of Hrul, it is much easier to step right in and sink rather than prolong the struggle. Rincewind let himself go. Yes, that one over there is Egg Stronglinham. Over there is Black Zimnel. It's Harun the Barbarian here, said Two Flower, looking around eagerly. Rincewind took a deep breath. That's him, behind us, he said. The enormity of his lie was so great that its ripples did in fact spread out one of the lower astral planes as far as a magic quarter across the river, where it picked up a tremendous velocity from a standing wave of power that always hovered there and bounced wildly across the Circle Sea. A harmonic got as far as Harun himself, currently fighting a couple of gnolls on the crumbling ledge high in the Kundrak Mountains, and caused him a moment's unexpected discomfort. Two Flower, meanwhile, had thrown back the lid of a luggage and was hastily pulling out a heavy black cube. This is fantastic, he said. They're never going to believe this back home. What is he going on about? The sergeant said the sergeant doubtfully. He's pleased you rescued us, said Rincewind. He looked sidelong at the black box, half expecting it to explode or emit some strange musical tones. Ah, said the sergeant. He was staring at the box too. Two Flower smiled brightly at them. I'd like to record the event, he said. Do you think you could ask them to stand over by the window, please? This won't take a moment. And Rincewind? Yes. Two Flower stood on tiptoe to whisper. I expect you know what this is, don't you? Rincewind stared down at the box. It had rounded glass, eye protruding from one center of the face, and a lever at the back. Not wholly, he said. It's a device for making pictures quickly, said Two Flower. Quite a new invention. I'm rather proud of it, but look, I don't think the gentleman would, well, I mean, they might be sort of apprehensive. Could you explain it to them? I'll reimburse them for their time, of course. He's got a box with a demon in it that draws pictures, said Rincewind shortly. Do what the madman says, and he will give you gold. The watch all smiled nervously. I'd like you in the picture, Rincewind. That's fine. Okay. Two Flower took out the golden disc that Rincewind had noticed before, squinted at its unseen face for a moment, muttered, 30 seconds should about do it, and said brightly, Smile, please! Smile, rasped Rincewind. There was a whir from the box. Right. High above the disc, the second albatross soared, so high in fact that its tiny mad orange eyes could see the whole of the world and the great glittering guiding Circle Sea. There was a yellow message capsule strapped to one leg. Far beyond it, unseen in the clouds, the bird that had brought the earlier message to the practitioner of Ankh-Morpork flapped gently back to its home. Rincewind looked at the tiny square of glass in astonishment. There he was, all right, a tiny figure in perfect colour, standing in front of a group of watchmen whose faces were each frozen in terrified rictus. A buzz of wordless terror went up from the men around him as they craned over his shoulder to look. Grinning, Two Flower produced a handful of smaller coins Rincewind now recognized as quarter rhino. He winked at the wizard. I had a similar problems when I stopped over at the Brown Islands, he said. They thought the iconograph steals a bit of their souls. Laughable, isn't it? Yeah, said Rincewind, and then, because somehow that was hardly enough to keep his side of the conversation, added, I don't think it looks very like me, though. easy to operate, said Two Flower, ignoring him. Look, all you have to do is press this button. The iconograph does the rest. Now, I'll just stand over here next to Harun, and you can take the picture. The coins quieted the men's agitation, and in a way that gold can, and Rincewind was amazed to find that half a minute later that he was holding a glass portrait of Two Flower wielding a huge notched sword and smiling though all of his dreams had come true. They launched a small eating house near the brass bridge, and the luggage nestling under the table. The food and the wine, both far superior to Rincewind's normal fare, did much to relax him. Things weren't going too bad. He decided a bit of invention and some quick thinking, that was all that was needed. Two Flower, seemingly to be thinking too, looking reflectively into his wine cup, said, "Having fights are pretty common around here, I'd expect." "Oh, barely." "No doubt fixtures and fittings get damaged?" "Vic? Oh, I see. You mean like benches and whatnot. Yeah, I suppose." "That must be upsetting for the innkeepers." "I've never really thought about it. I suppose it must be one of the risks of the job." Two Flower regarding him thoughtfully. "I might be able to help there. Risks are my business, I say. This food is a bit greasy, isn't it?" "You did say you wanted to try some typical Morkborgian food," said Rincewind. "But what was that about risks?" "Oh, I know all about risks. They're my business." "I thought that's what you said." "I didn't believe it at first time either." "Oh, I don't take risks. About the most exciting thing that happened to me was knocking some ink over. I assess risks. Day after day, do you know what the odds are against a house catching fire in the Red Triangle district of Bears Pelagic? 538 to 1. I calculated that," he added with a trace of pride. "What?" Rincewind tried to surpass a burp. What for? Excuse me." He helped himself to some more wine. "Or," Two Flower paused. "I can't say it in Throb," he said. "I don't think the B or B have a word for it. In my language, we call it," he said a collection of outlandish syllables. "In sewer ants?" repeated Rincewind. "That's a funny word. What's it mean?" "Well, suppose you have this ship loaded with, say, gold bars. It might run into a storm or be taken by pirates. You don't want that to happen. So, you take out in sewer ants policy. I work out the odds against the cargo being lost based on weather reports and piracy records for the last 20 years. Then I add a bit, and you pay me the money based on those odds." And the bit?" said Rincewind, wagging a finger solemnly. "And then if the cargo is lost, I reimburse you." "Reimburse?" "Pay you the value of the cargo," said Two Flower patiently. "Oh, I get it. It's like a bet, right?" "A wager? In a way, I suppose." "And you make money on this, insurance?" "It offers a return on investment, that's certain." Wrapped in the warm yellow glow of wine, Rincewind tried to think of an in-sewer ants in the Circle C terms. "I don't think I understand this in-sewer ants," he said firmly, idly watching the world spin. "Magic, now. Magic, I understand." Two Flower grinned. "Magic is one thing, and and reflected sound of ongoing spirits is another. He said, What? What? The funny word you use, said Rincewind impatiently. Reflected sound of underground spirits. Never heard of it. Two Flower tried to explain, while Rincewind tried to understand. In the long afternoon, they toured the city turnwise for the river. Two Flower led the way, with a strange picture box slung and strapped round his neck. Rincewind trailed behind, whimpering at intervals and checking to see that his head was still on. A few others followed too. In the city were public execution, duels, fights, magical fuels, strange events, regularly punctuated the daily round. The inhabitants had brought the performance of interest bystander to a peak of perfection. They were, to a man, highly skilled warpers. In any case, Two Flower was delighted taking picture after picture of people engaged in what he described as typical activities. And since a quarter rhino would subsequently change hands for their trouble, a tale of bemused and happy Novex riches was soon following him in the case of this madman exploded in a shower of gold. At the temple of the seven-handed Sek, a hasty conversation of priests and ritual heart transplant artisans agreed that the 100-span high statue of Sek was altogether too holy to be made into picture, but payment of 2 Rhinu left them astoundingly agreeing that perhaps he wasn't as holy as all that. The power of money, eh? Let me hydrate quickly, chat. A prolonged season at the Whore Pits produced a number of colourful and instructive pictures, a number of which Rincewind concealed about his person for detailed perusal in private later. As the fumes cleared from his brain, he began to speculate seriously as to how the iconograph worked. Even a failed wizard knew that some substances were sensitive to light. Perhaps the glass plates were treated by some arcane process that froze the light that passed through them. Something like that, anyway. And off somewhere in the map. Usually disappointed. However, he soon took every opportunity to operate the box. Two Flower was only too pleased to allow this, since it enabled the little man to appear in his own pictures. It was at this point Rincewind noticed something strange. Possession of the box conferred a kind of power on the wielder, which was that anyone confronted with their hypno-glass eye would submissively obey the most presumptuous orders about stance and expression. It was while he was thus engaged in the Plaza of Broken Moons that disaster struck. Two Flower had posed alongside a bewildered charm seller, his crowd of newfound admirers watching him with interest, in case he did something humorously lunatic. Rincewind got down on one knee and tried to arrange the picture and pressed the enchanted lever. The box said, "It's no good! I'm out of pink!" A hitherto unnoticed door opened in front of his eyes. A small green, hideously warty humanoid figure leaned out, pointed at the colour-encrusted palette in one clawed hand, and screamed at him. "No pink! See?" screeched the homunculus. "No good, you hear? No good you going on pressing that lever when there's no pink, is there? If you wanted pink, you shouldn't have took all of those pictures of young ladies, should you? It's monochrome from now on, friend, alright?" Alright, sure," said Rincewind. In one dim corner of the little box, he thought he could see an easel and a tiny unmade bed. He hoped that he couldn't. So long as that's understood, said the imp, and shut the door. Rincewind thought he could hear a muffled sound of grumbling and the scrape of a stool being dragged across the floor. Two-Flower, he began to look up, but Two-Flower had vanished. As Rincewind stared at the crowd with a sensation of prickly horror travelling up his spine, there came a gentle prod in the small of his back. Turn without haste, said a voice like black silk, or kiss your kidneys goodbye. The crowd watched with interest. It was turning out to be quite a good day. Rincewind turned slowly, feeling the point of a sword scraping along his ribs. At the other end of the blade, he recognized Sten Withel, thief, cruel swordsman, disgruntled contender for the title of the worst man in the world. Hi, he said weakly. A few yards away, he noticed a couple of unsympathetic men raising the lid of the luggage and pointing excitedly at the bags of gold. Withel smiled. It made an unnerving effect on his scar-crossed face. I know you, he said. A gutter wizard. What is that thing? Rincewind became aware that the little luggage was trembling slightly. Although there was no wind, he was still holding the picture box. This? It makes pictures,
all the time in Rush.
He said brightly. Hey, just hold that smile, will you? He backed away quickly and pointed the box. For a moment, Withel hesitated. What? He said. That's fine. Just hold it like that, said Rincewind. The thief paused, then growled and swung back his sword. There was a snap, a duet of horrible screams. Rincewind did not glance around, fear of the terrible things he might see. And by the time Withel looked for him again, he was on the other side of the plaza and still accelerating. The albatross descended in wide, slow sweep that ended in an undefined flurry of feathers and a thump as it landed heavily on its platform in the Patrician's bird garden. The custodian of the birds dozed in the sun, hardly expecting a long-distance message so soon after the one this morning, jerked to his feet and looked up. A few moments later, he was scuttling through the palace corridors, holding the message capsule, and owing to careless, brought on by surprise, sucking at the nasty beak wound on the back of his hand. Rincewind pounded down the alley, paying no heed to screams of rage coming from the picture box, and cleared a high wall within his frayed robe, flapping around him like the feathers of a disheveled jackdaw. He landed in the front court of a carpet shop, scattered the merchandise and customers, dived through its rear exit, trailing apologies, skidding down another alley, and stopped, teetering dangerously just as he was about to plunge unthinkingly into the Ankh. There are said to be some mystic rivers, one drop of which can steal a man's life away. After its turbid passage through the Twin Cities, the Ankh could have been one of those rivers. In the distance, the cries of rage took on a shrill note of terror. Rincewind looked around desperately for a boat, for a handhold up the sheer walls either side of him. He was trapped. Unbidden, the spell swelled up inside his mind. It was perhaps untrue to say that he learned it. It had learned him. The episode had led to his expulsion from Unseen University, because for a bet he had dared to open the pages of the last remaining copy of the creator's own Grimoire, the Octavo. while the university librarian was otherwise engaged. The spell had leapt out of the pages and instantly burrowed itself deep into his mind, from whence ever the combined talents of the faculty of medicine had been unable to coax it. Precisely which one it was they were also unable to ascertain, except that it was one of the 8 basic spells that were incorrectly interwoven in the very fabric of time and space itself. Since then, it had been showing a worrying tendency when Rincewind was feeling run down or especially threatened to try and get itself read. He clenched his teeth together, but the first syllable forced itself around the corner of his mouth. His left hand raised involuntarily, and as the magical force whirled around him, began to give off octarine sparks. The luggage hurtled around the corner, its several hundred knees moving like pistons. Rincewind gaped. Spell died unsaid. The box didn't appear to be hampered in any way, but the ornamental rug dropped ruggishly over it. Nor by the thief hanging by one arm from the lid. It was a very real sense of dead weight. Further along the lid were the remains of 2 fingers, the owner of which is unknown. The luggage halted a few feet from the wizard, and after a moment of retracting its legs, it had no eyes, but he was nevertheless sure that it was staring at him expectantly. "Shoo!" he said weakly. Budge. It creaked, opening. Thief. Rincewind remembered. Presumably, the box had a master. In the absence of Blue Flower, and it had adopted him. The tide was turning, and he could see the debris drifting yellow afternoon light towards the river gate and a mere 100 yards downstream. It was the work of a moment to let the dead feet join them. Even if it was found later, it would hardly cause comment. Oh, my brain really struggled with that one for a second. And the sharks in the estuary were used for solid, regular meals. Rincewind watched the body drift away and considered his next move. The luggage would probably float. All he had to do was wait till dusk, then go out with the tide. There were plenty of wild places downstream where he could wade ashore, and then, well, if the Petition really had sent out the word about him, then a change of clothing, a shave could take care of that. In any case, there were other lands and facility for languages. Let him but get to Chimera or Gorin or Epilov, and half a dozen armies could bring him back. Then wealth, comfort, and security. There was, of course, a problem. Blue Flower. Rincewind allowed himself a moment of sadness. It could be worse, he said by the way of farewell. Could be me. It was when he tried to move that he found his robe was caught on some obstruction. By craning his neck, he found that the edge of it was being gripped firmly by the luggage's lid. "Oh, Goffel," said the Petition pleasantly. "Come in, sit down. Can I press you a canned starfish?" Yours to command, master," said the old man. "Save perhaps in the matter of preserved ixionomidons." The Petition shrugged and indicated the scroll on the table. "Read that," he said. Gorful picked up the parchment and raised one eyebrow slightly when he saw the familiar ideograms of the Golden Empire. He read in silence for perhaps a minute, then turned the scroll over to examine the seal on the obverse. You are famed as a student of Empire Affairs, said the petition. Can you explain this? Knowledge in the matter of the Empire lies less in nothing particular events than in the study of certain cast of mind, said the old diplomat. The message is curious, yes, but not surprising. This morning, the Emperor instructed the petition allowed himself. Instructed me, Gorful, to protect this two-flower person. Now, it seems I must have him killed. You don't find that surprising? No, the Emperor is no more than a boy. He is idealistic, keen, a god to his people, whereas this afternoon's letter is, unless I am very much mistaken, from 9 turning mirrors, the Grand Vizier. He has grown old in the service of several emperors. He regards them as a necessity but tiresome ingredient to a successful running of the empire. He does not like things out of place. The empire was not built by allowing things to get out of place. That is his view. I think I'm beginning to see, said the petition. Quite so. Gothel smiled into his beard. The tourist is a thing that is out of place. After acceding to his master's wishes, 9 turning mirrors would, I am quite sure, make his own arrangement with a view to ensuring that one wanderer would not be allowed to return home, bringing perhaps these of dissatisfaction. The Empire likes people to stay where it puts them. So much more convenient than if Two-Flower disappears for good in a barbarian lands, meaning here, my master. And your advice, the petition said. Gorful shrugged. Merely that you should do nothing. Matters will undoubtedly resolve themselves, however, scratched an ear thoughtfully. Perhaps the Assassins Guild. Oh, yes, said the petition, the Assassins Guild. Who is their president at the moment? Lord Fannelfoot, master. Have a word with him, will you? Quite so, master. The petition nodded. It was all rather a relief. He agreed with 9 turning mirrors. Life was difficult enough. People ought to stay where they were put. Brilliant constellations shone down on the Discworld. One by one, the traders shuttered their shops. One by one, dwarfs, thieves, fine writers, whores, illusionists, backsiders, and second-story men awoke and breakfasted. Wizards went about their polydimensional affairs. Tonight saw the conjunction of 2 powerful planets, and already had the air of a magical quarter, hazy with early spells. Look, said Rincewind, this isn't getting us anywhere. Sideways, luggage followed faithfully, lid half open and menacing. Rincewind briefly considered making a desperate leap to safety. The lid smacked in anticipation. In any case, he told him with a sinking heart, the damned thing would only follow him again. It had that dogged look about it. Even if he managed to get a horse, he had a nasty suspicion that it would follow him at its own pace endlessly, swimming rivers and oceans, gaining slowly every night while he had to stop and sleep. And then one day in some exotic city and years hence, he'd hear the sound of hundreds of tiny feet accelerating down the road towards him. You've got the wrong man, he... Not my fault, I didn't kidnap him. The box moved forward slightly. Now there was just a narrow strip of greasy jetty between Rincewind's heels and the river. A flash of precognition told Fox would be able to swim faster than he could. He tried not to imagine what it would be like to drown in the Ankh. It won't stop until you give in, said the small voice confrontationally. Rincewind looked down at the iconograph still hanging around his neck. Its trapdoor was open and the homunculus was leaning against the frame, smoking a pipe and watching the proceedings with amusement. "I'll take you in with me, at least," said Rincewind through gritted teeth. The imp took a pipe out of his mouth. "What did you say?" he said. "I said, I'll take you in with me, damn it." "Suit yourself," said the imp, trapped inside the box, meaningfully. "We'll see who sinks first." The luggage yawned and moved forward a fraction of an inch. "Oh, all right," said Rincewind irritably. "But you'll have to give me time to think." The luggage backed off slowly. Rincewind edged his way back onto the reasonably safe land and sat down with his back against a wall. Across the river, the lights of the Ankh city glowed. "You're a wizard," said the picture imp. "You'll think of some way to find him." "Not much of a wizard, I'm afraid." "You can just jump down on everyone and turn them into worms," the imp added, encouragingly, ignoring his last remark. "No, turning to animals is an 8th level spell. I never even completed my training. I only know one spell." "What'll that do?" "I doubt it," said Rincewind hopelessly. "What does it do, then?" "I can't tell you. Don't really want to talk about it, but frankly," sighed, "no spells are much good. It takes 3 months to commit even a simple one to memory, and then once you've used it, poof, it's gone. That's what's so stupid about the whole magic thing, you know? Spent 20 years learning the spell that makes nude virgins appear in your bedroom, and then you're so poisoned by the quicksilver fumes and half blind from reading the old grimoires that you can't remember what happens next." "I never even thought of it like that," said the imp. "Hey, look, this is all wrong. When Two Flowers said that he got a better kind of empire, I thought... The imp looked at him expectantly. Rincewind cursed himself. "Well, if you must know, I thought he didn't mean magic. Not as such." "What else is there, then?" Rincewind began to feel really wretched. "I don't know," he said. "A better way of doing things, I suppose. Something with a bit of sense in it. Harnessing the lightning or something." The imp gave him a kind but pitying look. "Lightning is the spears hurled by the thunder giants when they fight," said gently. "Establishing meteorological fact. You can't harness it." "I know," said Rincewind miserably. "That's the flaw in the argument, of course." The imp nodded and disappeared into the depths of the iconograph. A few moments later, Rincewind smelled bacon frying. He waited until his stomach couldn't stand the strain anymore and rapped on the box. The imp reappeared. "I've been thinking about what you said." Said before Rincewind. "Oh, I've been thinking about what you said," he said before Rincewind could open his mouth. "And even if you could get a harness on it, how could you get it to pull a cart?" "What the hell are you talking about?" "Lightning! It just goes up and down. You'd want it to go along, not up and down."
Anyway, it probably burned through the harness. Don't care about the lightning. How can I think on an empty stomach? Eat something then. That's logic. Ow. Every time I move, that damn box flexes. The luggage on cue gaped widely. See? It's not trying to bite you, said the imp. There's food in there. You're not you're not used to it starved. Then peered into the dark recesses of the luggage. There were indeed, among chaos of boxes and bags of gold, several bottles and packages and oiled paper. He gave a cynical laugh, mooched around an abandoned jetty until he found a piece of wood about the right length, wedged it politely as possible in the gap between the lid and the box, pulled out one of the flat packages. It held biscuits that turned out to be as hard as diamond wood. Bloody hell, he muttered, nursing his teeth. Captain Eight Partners Traveller's Digestives them, said the imp from the doorway to his box. Saved many a life at sea, they have. Oh, sure. Do you use them as a raft or just throw them at the sharks and some sort of watch them sink? What's in these bowls? Poison? No, water. But there's water everywhere. Why do you want to bring water? Rust. Rust? Yes, that's what he did. That's what he didn't. The water here, see? Rincewind opened a bottle. The liquid inside might have been water. It had a flat, empty flavor with no trace of life, neither taste nor smell, he grumbled. The luggage gave a little creak, attracting its attention with a lazy air of circular tennis. It shut its lid slowly, finding Rincewind to wedge like a dry loaf. All right, he said. I'm thinking. Your Moore's headquarters were in the Leaning Tower at the junction of Rhyme Street and Frost Alley. At midnight, the solitary guard, looking in the shadows, looked up at the conjuring planets and wondered idly what change in his fortune they might herald. There was the faintest sound, as of a gnat yawning. The guard glanced down, deserted street. Now, a glimmer of moonlight. He picked it up, the lunar light gleamed, and his intake of breath was loud enough to go down. There was a slight sound again, and another coin. Street. By the time he had picked it up, there was another one. Gold was said to be formed from civilized. Till now, he'd never believed it to be true, that something as heavy as gold could fall now and die. As he drew level with the opposite alley mouth, some more fell. It was still in a bag. A lot of it. And Rincewind brought it down heavily onto his head. When the guard came to, he found himself looking up into the wild-eyed face of a wizard, who was menacing his throat with a sword in the darkness. Something was gripping his leg. It was the discerning sort of grip that suggested that the gripper could grip a whole lot harder if he wanted to. Where is the rich foreigner? Hissed the wizard. Quickly! What's holding my leg? Said the man, with a note of terror in his voice. He tried to wiggle free. The pressure increased. You wouldn't want to know, said Rincewind. Pay attention, please. Where is the foreigner? Not here. They've got him at Broadman's place. Everyone's looking for him. You're Rincewind, aren't you? The box. The box that buys people. Oh, no, 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 please. Rincewind had gone. The guard felt the unseen the guard felt the unseen leg gripper release his, or as he was beginning to fear, its hold. Then, as he tried to pull himself to his feet, something big and heavy and square cannoned onto him out of the dark and plunged off after the wizard. Something with hundreds of tiny feet. With only his homemade phrase book to help him, Twoflower was trying to explain the mysteries to ants to Broadman. The fat innkeeper was listening intently, his little eyes glittering. From the other end of the table, Ymir watched with mild amusement, occasionally feeding one of his ravens with scraps from the plate. Beside him, Whiffle paced up and down, without taking his eyes from. I can feel it, Dren. Who dare attack us here? And the gutter wizard will come. Too much of a coward not to. And he'll try to bargain. We shall have him, and the gold, and the chest. Whiffle's one eye glared, and smacked the fist in the palm of the black glove hand. Who would have thought there was so much semi-impairment in the whole of the disc? He said. How could we have known? You fret too much, Dren. I'm sure you can do better this, said Ymir pleasantly. The lieutenant snorted in disgust and strode off around the room to bully his men. Ymir carried on watching the tourist. It was strange, but the little man didn't seem to realize the seriousness of his position. Ymir had on several occasions seen him look around the room with an expression of satisfaction. He had also been talking for ages to Broadman, and Ymir had a 7 piece of paper to change hands. And Broadman had given the foreigner some coins. It was strange. When Broadman got up and waddled past Ymir's chair, the thief master's arm shot out like a steel spring and grabbed the fat man by his apron. What was all that about, friend? Ymir asked quietly. Nothing, Ymir. Just private business like. There are no secrets between friends, Broadman. Yeah, well, I'm not sure about it myself, really. It's a sort of bet, see? The innkeeper said nervously. In sewer ants is what he called it. Like a bet that the broken drum won't get burnt down. Ymir held the man's gaze until Broadman twitched in fear and embarrassment. Then the thief master laughed. This worm-eaten old tinder pile, he said. The man must be bloody mad. Well, yes, but mad with money. He says now he's got the can't remember the word. It begins with P. What you might call the stake money. The people he works for in the Argentine Empire will pay up if the broken drum burns down. Not that I hope it burns down. The broken drum, I mean, is like a home to me. You see, the drum. Not entirely stupid, are you? Said Ymir, and pushed the innkeeper away. The door slammed back on its hinges and thudded into the wall. Hey, that's my door! Screamed Broadman. Then he realized he was standing at the top of the steps and ducked behind the table, a mere shaving of time before the short black dart scraped across the room and funked into the woodwork. Ymir moved his hand carefully, poured out another flagon of beer. Won't you join me, Zlorf? He said levelly, and put that sword away stern. Zlorf Paddlefoot is our friend. Halfway to the door are several very large trolls ducked under the doorway and stood on either side of the fat man, blinking in the light, muscles the size of melons, bulging forearms like flour sacks. Each troll had double-handed axe between thumb and forefinger. Broadman erupted from across his face surface with rage. "Out!" he screamed. "Get those trolls out of here!" No one moved. The room was suddenly quiet. Broadman looked around quietly. It began to dawn on him just what he had said, and to whom. A whimper escaped from his lips. Glad to be free. He reached the doorway to his cellars just as one of the trolls, with a lazy flick from one ham-sized hand, sent his axe whirling across the room. The slam of the door and its subsequent splitting from the axe as it mangled in one sound. "Bloody hell!" exclaimed Zor Flannelfoot. "What do you want?" said Jimor. "I am here on behalf of the Guild of Merchants and Traders," said Ralph evenly. "To protect our interests, you might say, meaning the little man." "I'm sorry?" he said. I thought I heard you say the Guild of Merchants and Traders," agreed Ref. Behind him now, in the addition to more trolls, were several humans that Ymor vaguely recognized. He had seen them maybe behind counters and bars, shadowy figures, usually easily ignored, easily forgotten at the back of his mind. A bad feeling began to grow. He thought about how it might be to say a fox cornered by angry sheep. Hi, mi hermosa preciosa. I won't forget to hydrate, and I love you very much, my Michi. He thought about how it might be to see a fox confronted by angry sheep. Sheep, moreover, that could afford to employ wolves. How long has this guild been in existence, mate? Since this afternoon, said Ref. I am Vice Guild Master in charge of tourism, you know. What is this tourism you speak of? We're not quite sure, said Ref. An old bearded man poked his head over the guildmaster's shoulder and, speaking on behalf of the wine sellers of Moorpork, tourism means business. See? Well, more coyly. Well, said Ref, we're protecting our interests, like I said. Thieves out. Thieves out, cackled his elderly companion. Several others took up a chant, and Slor grinned. And assassins, chanted the old man. Zorf growled. Stands to reason, said Ref. People robbing and murdering all over the place. What sort of impression are visitors going to take away? You come all the way to see our fine city with its many points of historical civic interest, also many quaint customs, and you wake up dead in some back alley as it might be floating down the Ankh. How are you going to tell your friends what a great time you'll have? Let's face it, you've got to move with the times. Lorf and Ymor met each gaze. We have we? Said Ymor. Then let us move, brother, said Zlorf. And in one movement he brought his blowgun to his mouth and sent a dart hissing towards the nearest troll. It spun around, hurling itself axe, which whirled over the assassin's head and buried itself in a lurkless behind. Ref ducked, allowing the troll behind him to raise its huge iron crossbow and fire a spear-length quarrel into the nearest assassin. That start. It has been remarked before those who are sensitive to radiations of ox green, the eighth color, the pigment of the imagination, can see things that others cannot. Thus, it was Rincewind hurrying through the crowded, flare-lit evening bazaars of Morgport, with the luggage trundling behind him, jostled a tall, dark figure turned to deliver a few subtle curses, and behold, death. It had to be death. No one else went around with an empty eye sockets, and of course the scythe over one shoulder was another clue. As Rincewind stared in horror and courting couple laughed at some private joke, walked straight through the apparition without appearing to notice it. Death, insofar as it was possible in the face of non-moving features, looked surprised.
Rincewind,
Death said, in tones deep and heavy as the slamming lead of doors far underground. Said Rincewind, trying to back away from that eyeless stare.
but why are you here?
Boom, boom went the crypt lids in the worm-haunted farness under the mountains. Why not? Said Rincewind. Anyway, sure you've got lots to do, so if you'll just...
I was surprised that you jostled me, Rincewind. For I have an appointment with thee this very night.
Oh, no, 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 no. Not?
Of course. What's so bloody vexing about the whole business is that I was expecting to meet thee in Philophysis.
That's 500 miles away.
You don't have to tell me. Whole system's got screwed up again. I can see that. Look, there's no chance of you.
Rincewind backed away, hands spread protectively in front of him. The dead fish salesman on the nearby stool watched this madman with interest. Not a chance.
I could lend you a very fast horse.
No.
It wouldn't hurt a bit.
No. Rincewind turned and ran. Death watched him go and shrugged.
Sod you then.
Death said and turned. And noticed the fish salesman with a snarl. Death reached out a bony finger and stopped at the man's heart. But he didn't take much pride in it. Then Death remembered what was due to happen later that night. It would not be true to say that Death smiled, because in any case his features were perfectly frozen, his callous grin, but he hummed in a little tune cheery as a plague pit, and pausing only to extract the life from a passing mayfly with 1/9 the lies of a cat cowering under the fish stool. All cats can see into the octarine. Death turned on his heel and set off to the drum. That little snippet about all cats can see into the octarine, basically meaning all cats can see death. That's why I'm so good as a kunoichi. Short Street, Moorpork, is in fact one of the longest roads in the city. Filigree Street, across its turnwise end in the manner of the crosspiece of a T, and the broken drum, is so placed that it looks down the full length of the street. At the furthermost end of Short Street, a dark oblong rose on hundreds of tiny legs and started to run. At first it moved no more than a lumbering trot, but by the time it was halfway up the street it was moving arrow fast. Deaf vision, exactly, love. A darker shadow inched its way along one of the walls of the drum, and a few yards from the two trolls who were guarding the door. Rincewind was sweating. If they heard the faint clink of the specialty bags in his belt, one of the trolls tapped his shoulder, producing a noise like two pebbles being knocked together, and pointed down the straight street. Rincewind darted from his hiding place and turned and hurled his burden through the drum's nearest window. Whitful saw it arrive, bag proceeded across the room, turning slowly in the air and burst on the edge of the table. A moment later, gold coins were rolling across the floor, spinning and glittering. The room was suddenly silent, save for the tiny noises of gold and the whimpers of the wounded, which, with a curse, Whiffle dispatched the assassin he had been fighting. "It's a trick!" he screamed. "No one move!" 30 men and a dozen trolls froze in mid-grope. Then, for the third time, the door burst open, 2 trolls hurried through it and slammed it behind them, dropped the heavy bar across it and fled down the stairs. Outside there was a sudden crescendo of running feet, and for those last time the door opened, in fact it exploded, the great wood bar being hurled from far across the room and the frame itself giving way. Door and frame landed on the table, which flew into splinters, and it was then that the frozen fighters noticed that there was something else in the pile of wood. It was a box, shaking itself madly to free itself from the smashed timber around it. Rincewind appeared in the doorway, hurling another of his gold grenades. It smashed into a wall, showering coins. Down in the cellar, Broadman looked up, muttered to himself, and carried on with his work. His entire Spindlewinter's supply of candles had already been strewn on the floor, mixed with his store of kindling wood, and now was a barrel of lamp oil. "Oh, ants," he muttered. Oil gushed out and swirled around his feet. Whiffle stormed across the floor, his face a mask of rage. Rincewind took careful aim and caught the thief full on the chest with the bag of gold. But now Ymor was shouting, pointing an accursed finger. A raven swooped down from its perch in the rafters, dived, with talons open and gleaming. It didn't make it, however. At about halfway point, the luggage had leapt from its bed of splinters, gaped briefly in midair, and snapped shut. It landed lightly. Rincewind saw in its lid open again, slightly, just enough for a tongue large as a palm leaf, red as mahogany, to lick a few errant feathers. At the same moment, the giant candle we fell from plunged into the room. Rincewind, coiling himself like a spring, gave a standing jump and gasped at the beam, swinging himself up onto the relatively roof with a stretch that amazed even him. "Exciting, isn't it?" said a voice in his ear. Down below, thieves, assassins, trolls, merchants all realized at about the same moment that they were in a room treacherous of foothold by gold coins containing something among suddenly menacing shapes in a semi-darkness that was absolutely horrible. As one made for the door and had 24 different recollections of the exact position. High above the chaos, Rincewind stared at Two Flower. "Did you cut the lights down?" he hissed. "Yes." "How come you're up here?" "I thought it better not to get in everyone's way." Rincewind considered this. There didn't seem to be much he could say. Two Flower added, "A real brawl! Better than anything I'd imagined. Do you think I ought to thank them? Or did you arrange it?"
Hi, Dark. Welcome in, sweetie.
Rincewind looked at him blankly. "I think we ought to be getting down now," he said hollowly. "Everyone's gone." He dragged Two Flower across his littered floor and up the steps. They burst out into the tail end of the night. There were still a few stars, but the moon was down. There was faint glow. The rimwoodmost in part of the street was empty. Rincewind sniffed. "Can you smell oil?" he said. Then Whiffle stepped out of the shadows and tripped tripped him up. At the top of his cellar steps, Broadman knelt down and fumbled in his tinderbox. It turned out to be damp. "I'll kill that bloody cat," he muttered, and groped for the spare box that was normally on the ledge by the door. It was missing. Broadman said a bad word. A lighter tapped appeared in mid-air right beside him.
Here, take this one.
"Thanks," said Broadman.
Don't mention it.
Broadman went to throw the taper down the steps. His hand paused in mid-air. He looked at the tapper, brow furrowing. Then he turned around and held the tapper up to illuminate the scene. It didn't shed much light, but it did give the darkness shape. "Oh no," he breathed.
But yes,
said Death. Rincewind rolled. For a moment he thought Whiffle was going to split him where he lay, but it was worse than that. He was waiting for him to get up. "I see you have a sword, wizard," he said quietly. "I suggest you rise and we'll see how well you can use it." Rincewind stood up and slowly, as he dared, he drew from his belt the sword that he had taken from the guard a few hours and 100 years ago. It was a short, blunt affair compared to Whiffle's hair-thin rapier. "But I don't know how to use a sword," he wailed. "Good. You know, wizards can't be killed by edged weapons," said Rincewind desperately. Whiffle smiled coldly. "So I've heard," he said. "I look forward to putting that to a test," as he lunged. There are too many words that can be taken out of context. I'm just reading a story, Dark. Just reading a story, Honey Pie. Rincewind caught the thrust by sheer luck, jerked his hand away in shock, deflected the second stroke by coincidence, and took the third one through his robe at heart height. There was a chink. A little snarl of triumph died in his throat, and he drew the sword out and prodded again at the wizard, who was rigid with terror and guilt. There was another clink, and gold coins began to drop out of the hem of the wizard's robe. "So you bleed gold, do you?" hissed Whiffle. "But have you got gold concealed in that raggedy beard, you little—" As his sword went back and his final sweep, the sullen glow that had been growling in the doorway of the broken drum flickered, dimmed, and erupted into a roaring fireball that sent the walls billowing outward and carried the roof 100 feet into the air, before bursting through it in a gout of red-hot tiles. Whiffle stared at the boiling flames, unnerved. Rincewind leapt. He ducked under the thief's sword arm and brought his own blade around in an arc, so completely misjudged that it hit the man flat first and jolted out of the wizard's hand. Sparks and droplets of flaming oil rained down as Whiffle reached out with both gauntleted hands and grabbed Rincewind's neck, forcing him down. "You did this!" he screamed. "You and your box of trickery!" His thumb found Rincewind's windpipe. "This is it," the wizard thought. Whenever I'm going, it can't be worse than here." "Excuse me," said Toofler. Rincewind felt the grip lessen, and now Whiffle was slowly getting up to look at the hatred on his face. A glowing ember landed on the wizard, brushed it off hurriedly, and scrambled to his feet. Tooflower was behind Whiffle, holding the man's own needle-sharp sword, with the point resting on the thief's back. Rincewind's eyes narrowed. He reached into the robe and then withdrew his hand, bunched into a fist. "Don't move!" Am I doing this right?" Tooflower asked anxiously. "Says he'll skewer your liver if you move," Rincewind translated freely. "I doubt it," said Whiffle. "You want to bet?" No. As Riffle tensed himself to turn on the tourist, Winsrin lashed out and caught the thief on the jaw. Riffle stepped up in amazement for a moment and then quickly toppled into the mud. The wizard uncurled in his springing fist and rolled the gold coin slipped between his throbbing fingers as he looked down at the recumbent thief. Good grief, he gasped. He looked up and yelled as another ember landed on his neck. Flames were racing along the rooftops either side of the street. Allow me a moment to hydrate again. All around him, people were hurtling possessions from the windows and dragging horses from the smoking stables. Another explosion in the white-hot volcano that was the drum sent a whole marble mantelpiece seething overhead. The Withershins greatest and nearest Winsrind above the cradle of the collapsing rafters. Come on! He grabbed Two Flower's reluctant arm and dragged him down the street. My luggage! Blast your luggage! Stay here much longer and you'll go where you don't need luggage. Come on! Screamed Rincewind. They jogged on through the crowd of frightened people leaving the area while the wizard took great mouthfuls of cold-drawn air. Something was puzzling him. I'm sure all the candles went out, he said. So how did the drum catch fire? I don't know, moaned Toothleflower. It's terrible, Rincewind. We were getting along so well, too. Rincewind stopped in astonishment so that another refugee cannoned onto him and spun away in an oath. Get on! Yes, a great bunch of fellows, I thought. Language was a bit of a problem, but they were so keen for me to join their party. They just wouldn't take no for an answer. Really friendly people, I thought. Rincewind started to correct him and realized he didn't know how to begin. It'll be a blow for poor old Broadman, Toothleflower continued. Still, he was wise, still got his rhino and paid his first premium. Rincewind didn't know the meaning of the word premium, but his mind was working fast. You insured the drum? He said. You bet Broadman wouldn't catch fire. You bet Broadman it wouldn't catch fire? Oh yeah, standard valuation, 200 rhino. Why do you ask? Rincewind turned and stared at the flames racing towards them, and wondered how much of Ankh-Morpork could be bought for 200 rhino. Quite a large piece, he decided. Only not now, not the way those flames were moving. He glanced down at the tourist. You, he began, and stretched his memory for the most word in Throb tongue. The happy little bee-trob didn't really know how to swear properly. You, he repeated, another hurrying fatigue bumped into him, narrowly missing with a blade over his shoulder. Rincewind's tortured temper exploded. You little such a one who, while wearing a copper nose ring, stands in a footbath atop a Mount Rahura during a heavy thunderstorm and shouts that the Ahoran goddess of lightning has the facial features of a diseased Unhurian root.
Just doing my job,
Said the figure, skulking away. Every word fell as heavily as slabs of marble, moreover. Rincewind was certain that he was the only one who heard them. Grabbed Toothleflower again. Let's get out of here, he suggested. One interesting side effect of the fire of Ankh-Morpork concerns the Insua Ants policy, which left the city through the ravaged roof of the broken drum, was wafted high into the Discworld atmosphere on the eternal thermal and came to Earth several days and a few thousand miles away, on the Uhula bush of the Tobori Islands. The simple laughing islanders subsequently worshipped it as a god, much to the amusement of their more sophisticated neighbours. Strangely enough, the rainfall and harvest of the next few years were almost supernaturally abundant, and this led to a research team being dispatched to the islands by the minor religious facility of Unseen University. Their verdict was that it only went to show. The fire driven by the wind spread from the drum faster. The man could walk the timbers of the Widdershins gate, but were already on fire when Rincewind and his face blistered reddened from the flames. Reached them by now, and indeed on horseback, mounts hadn't been that hard to obtain. A worldly merchant had asked 50 times their worth, and had been left gaping when 1,000 times their worth had been pressed into his hands with haste. They rode through just before the first of the big gate timbers descended, and an explosion of sparks. Morpork was already on a cauldron of flames. As they galloped up the red light road, Rincewind glanced sideways at his travelling companion, currently trying hard to learn how to ride a horse. Oh, bloody hell, he thought. He's alive. Me too. Who would have thought it? Perhaps there's something to this reflected sound of underground spirits. It was a cumbersome phrase Rincewind tried to get his tongue around, the thick syllables that were the word Two Flower's own language. Ilkovalik, he tried. Echo Joe Bernix? Economics? That would do. That sounds about right. Several hundred yards downriver from the last smouldering suburb of the city, a strangely rectangular and apparently heavily waterlogged object touched the mud on the Widdershins bank. Immediately it spun numerous legs and scrabbled for purchase. Hauling itself to the top of the bank, the luggage shrieked with soot and stain, with water, and very, very, very angry, shook itself and took its bearings. Then it moved away at a brisk trot. The small and incredible ugly imp that was perching on its lid, watching the scenery with interest. Brevard looked at the weasel and raised his brow. And that's it, said Rincewind. The luggage caught up with us, don't ask me how. Is there any more wine? The weasel picked up his empty water skin. I think you've had just about enough wine this night, he said. Brevard's forehead wrinkled. Gold is gold, he said finally. How could a man with plenty of gold consider himself poor? You're either poor or rich. Stands to reason. Rincewind hiccuped and was finding reason different to hold on to. Well, what is the point? Well, you know, Octron? The two adventurers nodded. The strange iridescent metal was almost as highly valued in the lands around the Circle Sea as sapient pearwood, and was about as rare. A man who owned a needle made of Octron would never lose his way, since it always pointed to the hub of the Discworld, being
Drink water. Become.
Thank you. Get the hydrate. Accidentally disabled. It always pointed to the hub of the disc, being acutely sensitive to the disc's magical field. It would also miraculously darn his socks. Well, my point is see that gold also has a sort of magical field, sort of financial wizardry. Economics, Rincewind giggled. The weasel stood up and stretched. The sun was well up now, and the city below them was wreathed in a mist full of vapours. Also gold, he decided. Even a citizen of Morpork would, at the very point of death, desert his treasure to save his skin. Time to move. The little man called Two Flower appeared to be asleep. The weasel looked down at him and shook his head. City awaits, such as it is, he said. Thank you for a pleasant tale, wizard. What will you do now? He eyed the luggage, backed away, and snapped it to him. Well, there are no ships leaving the city now, Rincewind. I suppose we'll take the coast road to Rim. Got to look after him, you see, but look, I didn't make it. Sure, sure, said Weasel. He turned away and swung himself into the saddle of the horse Bavard was holding. A few moments later, the two heroes were just specks on a cloud of dust heading for the dark hole. Rincewind stared muzzily at the recumbent torch. At two recumbent torch, somewhat defenseless stare. They stay fought, wandering through the dimension in search of a marble slid into his brain. Here's another fine mess you got me into, he moaned and slumped backward. Mad, said the weasel. Bovard and gabbling a few feet away nodded. All wizards like that, he said. It's the quicksilver fumes. Rots their brains into mushrooms. However, said the brown-clad one, he reached into his tunic and took out a gold disc on a short chain. Brevard raised his eyebrows. That wizard said that little man had some sort of golden disc that told him the time, said the weasel. Arousing your cupidity, little friend. You always were an expert thief. Oh, sorry. Arousing your cupidity, little friend. You always were an expert thief. Aye, agreed the weasel modestly. He touched the knob of the disc's rim, flipped the coin open. A very small demon imprisoned within looked up from its tiny abacus and scowled. It lacks but 10 minutes to 8 of the clock, snarled. The lid slammed shut, almost trapping the weasel's fingers. With an oath, the weasel hurled the time teller far out into the heather where it possibly hit a stone. Something in any event caused the case to split. There was a vivid octarine flash and a whiff of brimstone as the time being vanished into whatever domain it had once called home. What did you do that for? Said Barvard, who hadn't been close enough to hear the words. Do what? Said Weasel. I didn't do anything. Nothing happened at all. Come on, we're wasting opportunities. Brava nodded. Together they turned their steeds and galloped toward dark and honest enchantments. And that's the end of the first part. And in plenty of good time too. It's about 3 hours. Even I'm feeling relaxed after that one. I hope you definitely all enjoyed me enjoyed me reading you a story. Oh, that's only the first part. It is a very, very long book, and that's only the first book in like 30 some of the whole Discworld story. I sure did, even though I only just got here. I'm very glad. Quite over yet. I did promise you a lot. I would attempt to sing something for you. So, give me a moment. Gotta find a song I want to sing. One of the ones I've been working on. Alright, that wanna work. That wanna work. Again. I do not understand.
Do you not understand? I probably never will. Let me get it correctly here. Yeah, about there. Let's see. Still picking me. Okay. No idea if this will be loud enough. So give me a moment to get to the okay. That, and you do this. Ah, gosh. Okay. You lot ready for this? Because I don't think I am. Where is that false confidence when you need it? Okay. I have not practiced this at all, so I'm gonna get it wrong. I don't know, does this actually... Okay, done. When you were here before, couldn't look you in the eye. You're just like an angel. Your skin makes me cry. You float like a feather in a beautiful world. I wish I was special. You're so fucking special. But I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't care if it hurts. I wanna have control. I want a perfect body. I want a perfect soul. I want you to notice when I'm not around. You're so fucking special. I wish I was special, but I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. She's running out the door. She's running out. She's run, 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 run. Whatever makes you happy. Whatever you want, you're so fucking special. I wish I was special, but I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't belong here. Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna hide now. I'm just gonna hide. Go stay down here for the rest of this. That's it. I'm done. Not doing any more. Oh. Why? 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 Why do you want more? I'm bad at this. That was horrible. Why? Why? You really, really want me to do another one? Really? Fine, give me a moment. I need to find another one I actually enjoy. I need to find one that I can actually do and that I actually know. I think of songs I actually know lyrics to. Actually, having. God, there. Okay. Fine. Fine. You get one more. Hear me? One more. And that's it. I'm not doing another one. This is the encore and that's it. Oh, God. Okay. I'm doing my immortal by evanescence. I'm so tired of being here, oppressed by all my childish fears. And if you have to leave, I wish that you would just leave, 'cause your presence still lingers here, and it won't leave me alone. These words won't seem to heal. This pain is just too real. There's just too much that time cannot erase. When you cried, I'd wipe away all of your tears. When you'd scream, I'd fight away all of your fears. When I held your hand through all of these years, but you still have all of me. You used to captivate me by your resonating light. Now I'm bound by the life you left behind. You face it haunt my once pleasant dreams. Your voice it chased away all the sanity in me. These wounds won't seem to heal. This pain is just too real. There's just too much that time cannot erase. When you cried, I'd wipe away all of your tears. When you'd scream, I'd fight away all of your fears. And I held your hand through all of these years, but you still have all of me. I tried so hard to tell myself that you're gone, but though you're still with me, I've been alone all along.
Say a bunch of racist things too. Nuclear.
When you cried, I'd wipe away all of your tears. When you'd scream, I'd fight away all of your fears. And I held your hand through all of these years. You still have all of me. I can admit I wasn't even looking at the words in half of that one because I know that one off by heart. Done. Hiding down here now. We're gonna find someone to raid. Done. 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 I am done. I am done. I will hydrate after I find someone to raid. I am done. I want to escape. I need to escape right now. We are going to go raid a goblin who is... What are you playing? Dark Pictures and Anthology. We're going to go raid a goblin. I love you all. I will see you all tomorrow. Those of you who watch me play Octopath. I'm done. I'm escaping this embarrassment. Bye.